10 biblical SIGs that God wants you to take responsibility for your actions. There are moments in life when the discomfort you feel is not caused by what others did to you, but by what God is revealing within you. Many people ask God to change their circumstances, to fix other people, to remove the weight they carry, yet rarely stop to ask if their own actions have created wounds around them. The way you speak, the way you react, the way you treat those who love you, strangers you ignore, animals you overlook, and even the world God entrusted to your care, all leave marks. Some marks heal, others hurt. Spiritual maturity begins when a person stops running from this truth and quietly asks, "What am I producing in the lives around me?" Scripture shows that God is loving, patient, and merciful, yet also just. In Galatians it is written that a person reaps what they sow. This is not punishment, it is a law of life. Every word carries weight, every attitude plants something, every choice shapes both your heart and the hearts of others. When Adam blamed Eve and Eve blamed the serpent, responsibility did not disappear. The consequence remained, because growth begins where excuses end. God did not abandon them, but He made them see. Responsibility is not rejection, it is an invitation to become aligned with truth. Many people live repeating patterns. They hurt, then justify. They react, then blame. They speak without love, then wonder why peace disappears. But when God begins to mature a soul, He does something deeper than changing circumstances. He shines light on the hidden corners of the heart, not to shame, but to awaken. Conviction is not condemnation, it is God whispering, you can become better than this, you can love better than this, you can walk in truth. Think about your daily life. The tension with family, the distance with friends, the impatience at work, the harsh reaction, the silent indifference, the moments when pride speaks louder than humility. These are not small things, they are seeds, and every seed grows. When King David faced the prophet Nathan after his sin, he could have denied, justified, or blamed. Instead he said, "I have sinned before the Lord." That moment did not destroy him, it restored him, because responsibility opens the door to transformation. This message is not about guilt, it is about awakening. When a person accepts responsibility, peace begins to grow, relationships begin to heal, and the heart becomes teachable. God is not looking for perfection, He is looking for honesty. The question is no longer who is wrong around you, but what God is trying to form within you. If you listen carefully, you may begin to recognize the signs that God is calling you to take responsibility, not as a burden, but as a path toward freedom, maturity, and true spiritual strength. One of the first signs that God is calling you to take responsibility is when He begins to confront your reactions, not your circumstances. Life may continue the same on the outside, yet something inside you feels unsettled after certain moments. You speak harshly and later feel a quiet discomfort. You act with impatience and peace leaves your heart. You justify your behavior, yet a deeper voice within you says, "This is not who you are meant to be." This inner conviction is not weakness. It is God teaching you to see the impact of your own actions. Many people believe their anger is caused by others, their coldness by disappointment, their harshness by stress. But Scripture often reveals a different truth. When Cain became angry with his brother Abel, God did not first correct the situation. He spoke to Cain's heart. He said that sin was at the door and Cain must master it. The warning was clear. Responsibility begins when a person understands that emotions do not excuse actions. Cain ignored this, and his reaction produced irreversible pain. God had warned him not to condemn, but to prevent the wound. In daily life, this happens quietly. A careless word can wound someone who trusted you. An impatient tone can discourage a heart already tired. Indifference can make someone feel unseen. Even toward animals and nature, neglect reflects a heart disconnected from care, and God entrusted creation to human hands. When the Spirit begins to mature a person, He makes them sensitive to these small moments. You begin to notice not only what others did, but what you produced. This awareness is uncomfortable, yet powerful. Instead of saying they made me react this way, the heart begins to ask, why did I choose this reaction? Instead of blaming, you begin to observe. Instead of justifying, you begin to reflect. This is where transformation starts. The person who learns to govern their reactions begins to walk in spiritual strength. Responsibility is not about carrying guilt, it is about gaining clarity. When you understand the weight of your reactions, you begin to choose differently, and peace slowly returns to places once marked by tension. Another sign that God is calling you to take responsibility is when He stops allowing you to comfortably blame others. Situations may still hurt you, people may still fail you, yet something inside no longer lets you rest in accusation. You begin to notice how often the mind searches for someone to fault, someone to carry the weight of what went wrong. But the Spirit gently redirects your attention inward, not to accuse you, but to awaken ownership. In the beginning, when Adam was confronted, he said the woman gave him the fruit. Eve said the serpent deceived her. Both spoke facts, yet neither accepted full responsibility. The consequence did not disappear because responsibility was avoided. God was not searching for information, He was inviting honesty. Growth begins when a person stops saying, "This happened because of them," and starts asking, "What was my part in this?" In daily life, this appears in subtle ways. Conflict arises, and the first instinct is defense. A mistake happens, and the mind protects itself. Pride whispers that admitting fault means weakness, yet Scripture shows the opposite. When King Saul lost obedience, he blamed the people. When David sinned, he accepted responsibility. One hardened, the other was restored. The difference was not perfection, but honesty before God. When God begins to mature a soul, excuses start to feel empty, justifications lose their comfort. You begin to see how blame delays healing, while responsibility opens the path to peace. Relationships improve not when others change first, but when your heart becomes teachable. Instead of protecting your image, you begin protecting truth. Instead of defending pride, you begin seeking growth. This is not easy, but it is freeing. The person who stops blaming others regains control over their own path. You cannot control every situation, but you can govern your response, your words, your choices. Responsibility restores dignity. It transforms conflict into learning, pain into clarity, and mistakes into wisdom. When God leads you to this place, He is not exposing you to shame. He is guiding you toward maturity that cannot be shaken by circumstances. Another sign that God is calling you to take responsibility is when He begins to reveal the hidden impact of your words. Words often seem small when they leave your mouth, yet they carry weight long after they are spoken. You may start to notice how certain phrases create distance, how careless speech leaves silence behind, how sharp tones echo in the hearts of those around you. This growing awareness is not accidental. It is God teaching you that speech is not only expression, it is influence. Scripture shows the power of words clearly. The book of Proverbs teaches that life and death are in the tongue. Words can build and words can break. When Peter spoke impulsively, denying Jesus 3 times, his words wounded not only his heart, but his spirit. Yet when he later spoke with humility and truth, his words became instruments of restoration and strength for many. The same mouth can either harm or heal, depending on the heart guiding it. In daily life, this truth appears in quiet ways. A harsh comment at home can linger longer than you realize. A dismissive tone at work can discourage someone already struggling. A joke spoken without care can wound deeply. Even silence when love should speak can leave someone feeling invisible. When God begins to mature a soul, He sharpens sensitivity to these moments. You begin to think before speaking. You begin to sense when your words lack patience, kindness, or truth. This realization invites responsibility. Instead of saying, "I only spoke the truth," the heart begins to ask, "Did I speak with love?" Instead of justifying tone, you begin to examine intention. Words are no longer impulsive reactions, but conscious choices. This shift transforms relationships. Where words once created tension, they begin to bring peace. Where speech once wounded, it begins to heal. Responsibility over words is a sign of spiritual growth. When God guides you to govern your speech, He is shaping your character. A disciplined tongue reflects a transformed heart. As you begin to choose words that build rather than break, you will notice something deeper changing within you. Peace becomes more present, clarity becomes stronger, and your influence begins to reflect the love and truth God is forming in your life. Another sign that God is calling you to take responsibility is when He begins to expose the consequences of your attitudes, not just your actions. Many people focus only on what they do, yet forget that attitudes silently shape every action that follows. Pride, indifference, impatience, bitterness, and selfishness often grow unnoticed, yet their effects appear in broken trust, emotional distance, and silent wounds. When God begins to mature you, He allows you to see how your inner posture affects the world around you. Scripture reveals this through the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector. Outwardly, the Pharisee did many correct things, yet his heart carried pride and judgment. The tax collector, aware of his faults, approached God with humility and honesty. One trusted his image, the other accepted responsibility. And Jesus showed that humility opened the door to grace, while pride kept the heart distant from truth. God does not only observe actions, He examines the heart behind them. In daily life, this becomes clear in quiet reflections. You may begin to notice how impatience makes you less compassionate, how pride prevents you from listening, how indifference distances you from those who need care. Even toward animals and nature, neglect often reflects a heart that has stopped noticing the value of what God created. These are not small details. They reveal the condition of the heart guiding your choices. When God calls you to responsibility, He invites you to look inward without fear. Instead of asking, "What did I do wrong?" the question becomes, "What is growing inside me?" This is where transformation deepens. When pride is replaced by humility, relationships soften. When impatience is replaced by understanding, tension decreases. When indifference is replaced by care, life around you begins to heal. Responsibility over attitudes is a powerful step in spiritual maturity. Actions may change behavior, but transformed attitudes change character. God is not merely correcting what you do, He is shaping who you are becoming. And as your heart becomes aligned with humility, compassion, and truth, the impact of your presence begins to bring peace rather than pain, clarity rather than confusion, growth rather than regret. Another sign that God is calling you to take responsibility is when He begins to show you the pain that your immaturity has caused in others. This realization often comes quietly. You start remembering moments when someone withdrew after your reaction, when a relationship cooled after your words, when trust weakened after your choices. At first, the mind may try to defend itself, but the heart begins to see more clearly, not to accuse you, but to awaken empathy. Spiritual maturity grows when a person learns not only to see their own pain, but also the pain they may have created. Scripture reveals this through the story of Joseph and his brothers. Driven by jealousy and immaturity, they wounded him deeply, believing their actions would erase him from their lives. Years later, when famine forced them to face Joseph again, their hearts awakened to what they had done. They did not first fear punishment. They felt the weight of their past actions. Responsibility opened the door to restoration. Joseph did not respond with revenge but with mercy, showing that when responsibility is accepted, healing becomes possible. In daily life, this awakening changes how you see others. You begin to recognize how impatience may have discouraged someone who needed kindness, how indifference may have made someone feel invisible, how pride may have pushed away those who cared about you. Even small acts of neglect toward animals and the natural world begin to feel different, because empathy grows where immaturity once ruled. The heart becomes more sensitive, not weaker, but wiser. When God leads you to this awareness, He is shaping compassion within you. Instead of asking, why did they react this way, you begin asking, what did I contribute to this moment? Instead of protecting pride, you begin seeking reconciliation. Responsibility becomes the bridge between brokenness and healing. And as empathy deepens, your presence begins to comfort rather than wound, to restore rather than divide. This is a powerful step in growth. The person who learns to recognize the impact of their immaturity begins to walk in wisdom. God is not reopening wounds to hurt you. He is revealing them so they may be healed. When responsibility is embraced, relationships gain new life. Compassion replaces hardness, and the heart begins to reflect the mercy that God has always shown toward you. Another sign that God is calling you to take responsibility is when He begins to interrupt your patterns. Situations repeat, reactions repeat, outcomes repeat. And slowly, you start to notice that the common element in many of these moments is not the circumstance but your response. This realization is uncomfortable, yet deeply transformative. God often allows patterns to continue until the heart becomes willing to see what it has avoided. Responsibility begins when repetition becomes revelation. Scripture reveals this through the journey of the Israelites in the wilderness. They witnessed provision, guidance, and protection, yet repeatedly responded with complaint, fear, and doubt. The external situation changed many times, but their inner posture remained the same. Only when a new generation chose trust and obedience did the cycle break. God was not punishing them, He was inviting them to maturity. Patterns ended when responsibility began. In daily life, this appears in quiet reflection. The same conflicts arise in different places, yet feel strangely familiar. The same emotional reactions appear even when the people involved change. The same regret returns after moments of impatience, pride, or avoidance. When God begins to mature you, He allows you to see that circumstances do not create patterns, choices do. This awareness shifts the focus from what is happening around you to what is forming within you. Instead of asking why this keeps happening to me, the heart begins to ask what must change within me. This question opens the door to growth. Responsibility gives you the power to interrupt cycles that once felt unavoidable. Reactions become conscious choices, emotions become guided rather than uncontrolled, and wisdom begins to replace impulsiveness. God does not reveal patterns to discourage you, but to free you. When you recognize and accept your role in repeated outcomes, you regain direction over your life. The person who breaks harmful patterns begins to experience peace where confusion once lived, stability where tension once ruled, and clarity where regret once lingered. Responsibility is not a burden. It is the key that unlocks transformation and allows your path to move forward with purpose and spiritual strength. Another sign that God is calling you to take responsibility is when He begins to confront your silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence of avoidance. Moments when you should speak truth, show care, defend what is right or correct what is wrong, yet remain quiet out of fear, pride, discomfort, or indifference. At first, silence feels safe. It avoids conflict, protects image, and postpones discomfort. But over time, silence can allow harm to grow, wounds to deepen, and truth to fade. God begins to show you that inaction is also a choice, and every choice carries weight. Scripture reveals this in the story of the priest Eli. He knew his sons were acting wrongly, yet he failed to confront them with firm responsibility. His silence did not preserve peace, it allowed corruption to continue. The consequence was not only personal, but generational. God showed that knowing what is right and refusing to act is not neutrality, it is neglect. Responsibility includes not only what you do, but what you allow. In daily life, this becomes clear in subtle ways. When someone is treated unfairly and you remain silent. When a loved one is drifting and you choose comfort over honest care. When you see harm toward animals or neglect toward creation and look away. When your own habits damage your peace, yet you postpone change. These moments seem small, yet they shape character and outcomes. When God begins to mature a soul, He awakens courage within it. You start to feel a gentle unrest when silence replaces truth. Not an aggressive force, but a steady conviction that calls you to act with wisdom and love. Responsibility begins when avoidance ends. Speaking truth with humility, acting with care, correcting with compassion. These become expressions of growth rather than conflict. God does not call you to harshness, but to faithfulness. Silence that protects fear keeps the heart stagnant, but courage guided by love brings life. When you accept responsibility not only for your actions but also for your inaction, you begin to walk in deeper integrity. And integrity strengthens the soul, restores direction, and allows your life to reflect the quiet strength of a heart aligned with truth. Another sign that God is calling you to take responsibility is when He begins to discipline what you justify. There are behaviors people learn to defend over time. Harsh reactions are explained as honesty, impatience as pressure, coldness as protection, neglect as busyness. At first, these justifications feel reasonable, yet something inside begins to resist them. The heart no longer finds peace in excuses. This inner resistance is not condemnation. It is God gently dismantling what keeps you from growing. Scripture reveals this through the story of King Saul. He disobeyed God, yet justified his actions by pointing to circumstances and intentions. Outwardly, his explanation sounded logical, but inwardly, he avoided responsibility. Because of this, his heart slowly hardened. In contrast, when David was confronted, he did not defend himself. He acknowledged his fault. One justified and drifted, the other accepted responsibility and was restored. The difference was not perfection, but honesty before God. In daily life, this awakening appears quietly. You begin to notice when you excuse impatience instead of correcting it, when you defend pride instead of humbling it, when you postpone change while calling it timing. Even in small things, such as neglecting care toward animals, people, or the environment, the heart begins to feel the weight of what it once ignored. God is not exposing you to shame. He is inviting you to truth. Responsibility grows when excuses lose their comfort. Instead of saying, "This is just how I am," the heart begins to ask who I am becoming. This question opens transformation. Justification keeps patterns alive, but responsibility reshapes character. When you stop defending what harms growth, you begin to choose differently. Reactions soften, attitudes mature, and clarity replaces confusion. God disciplines with love, not rejection. When He challenges your justifications, He is forming strength within you. The person who learns to release excuses becomes teachable, and the teachable heart grows steadily. Responsibility is not about self-condemnation, it is about alignment. As excuses fade, integrity rises, and your life begins to reflect the quiet maturity of a heart that chooses truth over comfort. Another sign that God is calling you to take responsibility is when He begins to awaken your conscience, even in the smallest things. Moments that once passed unnoticed now speak to you. A careless attitude, a neglected duty, a lack of kindness, a moment of selfishness. And suddenly something inside becomes alert. Not loud, not condemning, but clear. This is the quiet work of God, shaping sensitivity within your heart. Responsibility is not only about major decisions, it is revealed in everyday choices. Scripture shows this through the moment when David secretly cut the corner of Saul's robe. No one saw, no one accused him, yet his heart was troubled, his conscience awakened, not because of punishment, but because of alignment with truth. God was forming integrity within him. The lesson was simple, yet deep. A mature heart does what is right, even when no one is watching. Responsibility grows in private before it is seen in public. In daily life, this appears in subtle but powerful ways. You begin to notice when your tone lacks patience, when your reaction lacks compassion, when your actions lack care. Even small neglect toward animals, people, or nature begins to feel different because your conscience is no longer silent. This is not weakness, it is spiritual refinement. The heart becomes more aware, more thoughtful, more aligned with love and truth. Instead of ignoring these inner signals, you begin to respond to them. A small correction here, a gentle change there, and slowly your character reshapes. Responsibility in small things produces stability in greater things. Integrity formed in hidden moments builds strength that circumstances cannot shake. God awakens the conscience not to burden you, but to guide you. The person who listens to this quiet voice begins to walk in clarity. Choices become wiser, relationships become healthier, and peace becomes deeper. When responsibility reaches even the smallest areas of life, transformation becomes consistent, and the heart begins to reflect the steady, faithful maturity that God desires to form within you. Another sign that God is calling you to take responsibility is when He begins to lead you from awareness into change. Recognition alone does not transform a life. Seeing your faults, understanding your impact, feeling conviction, these are the beginning, not the destination. Spiritual maturity deepens when awareness becomes action, when reflection becomes decision, when intention becomes transformation. God does not reveal truth to leave you where you are. He reveals it to move you forward. Scripture shows this through the story of Zacchaeus. When he encountered Jesus, he did not only feel conviction, he acted. He chose to restore what he had taken, to correct what he had done, to realign his life with truth. Responsibility became visible through change. Jesus did not demand perfection, but he honored transformation. The encounter became redemption because awareness turned into action. In daily life, this moment is powerful. You begin to recognize where your reactions must soften, where your words must heal, where your attitudes must humble, where your care must grow toward people, animals, and the world around you. Responsibility moves from thought into practice. Apologies become sincere, behavior becomes intentional, choices become aligned with growth. This is where transformation becomes real. God calls you not to carry guilt, but to walk in renewal. The person who accepts responsibility and acts upon it begins to experience a new kind of peace. Regret loses its hold, clarity increases, and direction becomes steady. Change does not happen instantly, but it becomes consistent. Step by step, the heart grows stronger, wiser, more aligned with love and truth. Responsibility is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of restoration. When awareness becomes action, life begins to reflect the quiet strength of a heart transformed by God. And in this transformation, you discover that responsibility does not imprison you. It frees you to live with integrity, purpose, and the steady peace that comes from walking in truth. There comes a moment when everything becomes clear. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because the heart finally becomes honest. Responsibility is no longer seen as a burden, but as a path toward freedom. When a person stops running from their own actions, stops hiding behind excuses, stops blaming others, something inside begins to heal. Peace does not come from controlling circumstances, it comes from alignment with truth. Scripture shows this through the story of the prodigal son. He reached a point where he could no longer blame hunger, distance, or misfortune. He said, "I will arise and return." That decision changed everything. Responsibility did not destroy him, it restored him. The Father did not receive him with rejection, but with mercy. This is the heart of God. He does not expose your faults to shame you, but to bring you back to life. Think about your journey now. The words you speak, the reactions you choose, the attitudes you carry, the care you show toward family, friends, strangers, animals, and creation. All of these shape the world around you. Every action plants something, and what you plant today becomes what you live tomorrow. This is not fear, it is truth, and truth, when accepted, brings freedom. Responsibility is the doorway to transformation. When you accept your part, you regain direction. When you choose honesty, you regain clarity. When you act with love, you restore what was broken. God is not asking for perfection, He is inviting sincerity. A sincere heart can grow, change, and become new. This is the quiet miracle of spiritual maturity. Let this be a turning point. Not a moment of guilt, but a moment of awakening. Choose responsibility over excuses, truth over comfort, growth over stagnation. As you walk this path, you will notice peace returning, relationships healing, and strength forming within you. And in this quiet transformation, you will understand that responsibility was never meant to burden you. It was meant to guide you toward the life God always intended for you, a life of integrity, restoration, and living hope. If this message spoke to your heart, remain in this reflection, carry it into your daily life, and allow truth to guide your next steps. Growth begins the moment responsibility is embraced, and the journey of renewal continues each day you choose to walk in it.